You're on a rock floating in space, and on this rock there are more rocks. Our ancestors picked up these rocks, thus beginning the obsession with lifting heavy things, which will last until the sun burns out. However, fitness and bodybuilding looks a little bit different nowadays, with influencers more likely to pick up their phone in the gym than a dumbbell. How did we go from this to this? A long time ago, around 2.5 million years ago to be exact, the first humans began to use tools, such as sharp stone and blunt stone. These early humans were insanely fit, having to either hunt or scavenge for their food over miles and miles of wilderness, and it stayed like that. Until around 4,000 years ago when a small civilization called Egypt emerged and changed the world forever. The ancient Egyptians, however, were big-headed, and the leaders decided that they wanted to create massive monuments as graves, like this. But to build this, you need a fit population of people to carry these huge stones, or aliens. Ancient Egyptian workers for the pyramids were fed a diet which was perfect for the physical labor they were doing. It was high in protein, and thousands of farm animals were slaughtered in order to sustain the workers, a diet which is still followed today, and they needed it. Each stone was around 2.5 tons on average. Outside of carrying stones, physical fitness and strength were highly valued, and individuals would engage in weightlifting and even gymnastics. This is likely what helped Egypt become the greatest civilization at the time. But what's that on the horizon? Fast forward to 775 BC. Some small civilizations in Greece have just formed the Olympic Games. The earliest games held are running and wrestling, and the Olympians were starting to understand the basics of bodybuilding and muscle building. Milo of Croton was the most famous of them all, and invented a technique which we still use today, although he wasn't humble about it. Milo was a famed wrestler and the strongest man to live in ancient Greece. In the off-season of the Olympics, he would train every day by carrying a newborn calf on his back, and by the time the Olympics rolled round in the 4th year, he would be carrying a full-grown 4-year-old cow on his back. Considering this cow would almost weigh 1,000 kilograms, I don't think this is the entire truth. But it's an impressive story nonetheless, and is the first known story of progressive overload. Milo would later be eaten by a lion after trying to prove he could split a tree trunk in half and getting his fingers stuck. During the peak of the Greek civilization, fitness became an integral part of society, and it was seen as a means of healing and improving the body, mind, and soul. The famous Greek philosopher Socrates once said, "It's a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable." They built statues of perfectly carved men and their gods, a physical ideal which is still upheld to this day. Around 750 years has passed now, and the next biggest civilization was ancient Rome, who loved the Greeks. They copied their gods and seemingly copied their physical ideals. They carved thousands of statues which were pretty much direct copies of the Greeks, and this will be important later. But onto the fitness side of things, the Roman army was one which valued being in shape more than any other standing army we've seen before. In order to join the esteemed Roman forces, you had to be able to march 20 miles in 5 hours, in full armor weighing over 45 pounds. To this day, a Roman soldier and gladiator is still seen as an icon for fitness. Let's fast forward a bit, actually a lot, to around 1500 AD. We're staying in Italy, but while the nerds were working on things such as reading and science, the Chad lifters such as Michelangelo and Da Vinci were studying the human body during the Renaissance. The first ever book about sports science was written in 1569, titled De Arte Gymnastica, penned by Italian physician Hieronymus Mercurialis. It explains how ancient Greeks and Romans kept fit, even giving guidelines for the different types of exercises they did. Da Vinci also created the Vitruvian Man, the perfect physique and body proportions of a male. And 100 years later, the Brits came knocking. And we have our very own real-life strongman named Thomas Topham. Tom was a beast and was a traveling strongman who basically went around England showing off how strong he was. But his most famous feat was a huge deadlift. After the Brits beat the Spanish in Portobello, old Tom celebrated in the only way he knew how. He gathered the British admirals and lifted over 600 kilograms worth of water barrels off the ground, and the crowd went wild. In general, during the Renaissance and the 1700s, fitness was important, as it allowed you to enjoy games and sports which were on the rise at the time. However, it was very much functional fitness, with not too much emphasis on the aesthetic side. It's now 1850, and some genius just decided to switch the factories from water to coal, kickstarting the Industrial Revolution and its consequences. During the Industrial Revolution, physical labor started to, in general, decline, as more people moved away from heavy farm work and into factories in the big city. Foods also started to get more unhealthy as the Industrial Revolution allowed us to refine sugar and grains. Weight gain, which was once a sign of wealth and fortune, started to become more common in this time. People started getting lazier as they would clock in and clock out, no longer tending to the farms and enduring physical labor like we used to. We started to stray away from the ideas of physical excellence and training. Until 1867, when Eugene Sandow was born in Prussia. Although, for now, we know him as Frederick, as his name change would come later and be for quite dark reasons. Frederick Sandow fell in love with bodybuilding when he was just 10 years old after he became fascinated with the marble statues of the past. He started to become obsessed with the male physique and getting stronger. Instead of getting bigger like the strongmen of those days, he was focused on the Grecian ideal, resembling the statues of those he discovered all those years ago. The workout equipment of the time was top notch too, which allowed Frederick to work every part of his body. I mean, just look at some of these machines. You've got the horse rider, the boy crusher, and the foot massager. Truly a marvel of sports engineering. By 1885, Frederick was a beast after years of training and obsessing over his fitness, so traveled around Europe as part of a circus. It was at this point he changed his name to Eugene, in honor of the movement known as eugenics. If you aren't sure of what eugenics is, I'll let you research that more for yourself. By 1901, he had written a book titled Physical Strength and How to Obtain It. He had also hosted the first ever bodybuilding show in the Royal Albert Hall, which was so popular they actually had to turn people away from the door. This is why he's known as a father of modern bodybuilding, as no one before him had quite the impact on the specific sport of bodybuilding and curated posing routines. He's a pioneer in this regard and is immortalized on the top of the Mr. Olympia trophies. So as we skip over two small events called World War I and World War II, we get into the golden era. Santa Monica, California, Muscle Beach as they called it, was a living testament to the rise of bodybuilding. Suddenly, muscles weren't just about lifting heavy anymore, and it was all about perfect form, exact proportions, and showmanship. It's the 60s, and the star of the show is the Austrian oak, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was a god among men, and put the statues of the Greek and Roman ideals to shame. But it wasn't all just about muscles. Nutrition took the spotlight too. Diets became fine-tuned, just like the bodies they were fueling. Every calorie, every protein shake mattered. Gyms turned into laboratories for physique perfection in more ways than one. This obsession with physique would lead to the rise of performance enhancers or steroids. No matter how much they deny it, we all know these bronze gods were on gear. Bodybuilding shows are also becoming more popular, with Arnold cleaning up almost every show he went to in the 60s, such as Mr. Olympia and Mr. Universe. It was basically just a time of massive bodybuilding growth. More and more average people were getting into the sport, with films being made and TV shows starring Arnold himself. Multiple Mr. Olympia winners later, more and more bodybuilding legends started to spawn, such as Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman, whose video you can find here. Which takes us nicely into the modern day. Bodybuilding and fitness is more mainstream than ever. There are subreddits with millions of followers, each to their specific niche of sport and fitness. Fitness celebrities like Chris Bumstead and Callum Von Moger have racked up millions of followers on YouTube and Instagram for sharing their workout routines and just simple daily vlogs. It can also be seen as a social media age, not just in the fitness world. Apps like TikTok allow the average Joe to build up followings of thousands and can completely change their lives. The rise of influencers and their impact on younger people mean that more people are starting to get into the fitness and the gym at a much younger age than they used to. And with the rise of obesity in the modern era due to our sedentary lifestyle, this can only be seen as a positive. However, these influencers have gotten smart or greedy and decided to abuse their positions and their followings on these platforms, leading to the toxic subdivision on social media known as gym talk. The fitness industry on social media has become so money-oriented that it is hard to see which influencers mean well and want to help and which ones are just targeting your wallet. Outside of these toxic influencers, influencers, it's still massively encouraging to see how much fitness has gained popularity in the last few years. Although I suppose, depending on how you look at it, all it really comes down to is the innate desire to pick heavy things up and put them back down. So that was the entire history of fitness and bodybuilding. I'm sure I've left loads out, so make sure you put a comment and let us know. If you want to see more videos in this style, click the video that's on your screen now, and I'll see you in the next one.